Oh, Bill. Hello, Harry, Ashley. How are you all? Oh, wait, I can't hear you. Maybe it's me. Hold on. Harry.
Now.
There you go. Now we can hear you.
I'm unmuted. We
Yes.
are irritated because the response just came in like a half an hour ago from the Inspector General.
Right. And I posted it on the website. There's Ed. Hello, Ed. Larry.
There's Ashley.
Yes, I saw Ashley earlier.
All right. Is that going to be it on the, the Inspector General's office needs to probably unmute, but the question is that, are you two the only ones from your office?
Yes, sir, and good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So it's only going to be Mr. Douglas and Mr. Michelle, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, I guess before I call the meeting to order, it's clear that I should state that it's outrageous that we get your response like 27 minutes or something before this meeting is going to start. I mean, you got our email, I think it was sent out like the 10th, right, Ashley? 10th of May or something, our report?
I believe so.
I mean, I don't get it if you didn't, but we're going to go forward and respond. We can't respond in great detail to some of your comments because all we had a chance to do is to skim it. So that being said, let me as chairman.
If I may, sir, we've kind of been busy reorganizing and dealing with some of the fallout here through personnel issues, and we haven't had any internet service. Our Cox provider was down. But that being said, sir, and as I said in email on with regard to your findings and your recommendations.
All right. Well, look. May I call you Ed?
Yes, sir.
And call me Harry, please. Look. Yes. Well, let's go through the agenda. We actually, you may have been there, had a bad experience in our first meeting with Mr. Harper when he asked to say something and the meeting blew up. So we're just going to follow the agenda. You'll have great opportunity in item number 5, agenda item number, hey, Mike, agenda item number 5 to respond in any way you want. But let me say, I think had some things to say because I thought there were a lot more people on. I'd like to clarify one point, so in case maybe for Larry and for Ed. I'm the chairman, not because of any great innate ability or intelligence. It's just that I'm the representative of the city council, and by ordinance, I'm the chair. I'd also, once again, not only like to thank Bill for all of his help, and Ashley, once again, for creating from, as I like to say, incoherent mumblings and discussions, a cogent and well-written report. She is the one that deserves a great deal of credit for making us sound sensible. We welcome you gentlemen, and Mike, welcome to this meeting. And it goes without saying that, as I guess you're like the IIG, the interim Inspector General, we certainly share your aspirations and wish you great success. But we have no personal issues to involve. We're just looking at the reports and our facts. We disagree strenuously with you in some areas, and even more so after skimming your report. But just so we know, item number 2 on the agenda is the ratification of certification of necessity for the video conference / teleconference meeting. So according from what I understand, Dane, I'm supposed to just say that that's what we needed to do to have this meeting. So this meeting is being recorded, and the recording will be linked to the website. And so that's going to serve as minutes also. We have also, I assume that Ed's half an hour ago or so email is going to be put on or has been put on the website, and the correspondence that emails we've had back and forth, yours to Ashley, my response to that, and is also going to be on the website. As I was going to say, what we thought the best way to do this was to just go through the agenda as we've written, and you will have all the time in the world to respond and say what you like at the appropriate time. Introductory remarks and welcome. Excuse me, I'm getting over a little bit of a cold. I do not have COVID, so you can't catch it through the Zoom. We're happy to meet with you all and go over this. We look at issues and not personalities. We understand that it was, as we said in our report, we're not unmindful, and I'm trying to paraphrase, of the difficulty of an unplanned transition in leadership, and obviously the COVID situation. Well, the way we're going to go about this is I'm going to talk about four what we consider overriding or broad issues, which this is our third year, and some of them are still there. And so we can say how we feel about them. And then Ashley is going to, with Bill also, but Ashley as the writer is going to go over the report and item by item, and then we'll of course be glad to respond to any questions you have and talk about your email response also. There's four issues that we have. The two specific ones which you've addressed and we've talked about is question of productivity. Obviously, that's an issue of concern to us. And I think from reading your emails and from your response, which I just skimmed, I can't say I've studied it, or it's a concern to you too, correct?
Sir, it is absolutely a concern. You are spot on. We have taken several measures to ensure that we improve our performance. But part of the problem here is that we inherited in the past leadership is that they did not take seriously our ability to hire. So we are at 50.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Let's come back to that. It's my fault for asking you. The other issue that
no, sir, we're in complete agreement on that.
Okay.
Taking measures.
And the other was, and I think you're in agreement of that, but I have some questions. Basically, was going to be the delineation of potential savings, which was not delineated in your report, and you talked about that. We'll get to that later. I think the other issues in one way or the other have to do with methodology, and in this point, we feel that your position, as best I can say it, is fundamentally flawed. Your position is on one item, and that has to do with how we go about it. The ordinance calls for you all to be under it's called the General Accepted Government Auditing Standards, right? GAGAS, or I wouldn't know how to pronounce it. And I'm sure you all are. However, and I have to emphasize that, as many times as the three of us has read the ordinance, there is not one mention of any standards that we need to follow other than obviously our good judgment and honesty. So the idea that we should follow those standards when you're doing an investigation and we're doing a report on a report, we think is fundamentally flawed. It's not called for, it's not acceptable. And you're right, you investigate, we report on a report. I mean, and you, it's like, if I just finish, I will want to finish before you can get back to this later. But the idea, as in your email and certainly in the responses, last two responses, year 4, continues to be that we should do what you all do in your investigations, in a sense, have a collaborative effort with you to be sure that everything we say is correct and right. But that's what our job is to take a written report and respond to it. There's no question about what you say or I mean, we may have questions about the facts, but we report on the report. And so therefore it doesn't seem appropriate. I mean, to me, it sounds childish, but it's like a high school English class where you go ask the teacher if it would be okay for him or her to review your paper and correct any grammatical errors or any thoughts that are wrong before you turn it in. I mean, that's not what our report is, and it shouldn't be. We are an independent agent. It's called an external review, which by definition is independent and not collaborative. So those are the 2 points that we would make.
Yes, you're absolutely correct in that. We agree with you. I was just suggesting that, and not from any matter to collaborate or sway, just to see if we could maybe get together to, before anything gets put into print, because once it gets into print and it gets out there, if there are some potential inaccuracies, I just wanted to be able to get ahead of it. And I believe there's much that we can learn from each other, and there's no prohibition from that in the ordinance. And that was all my point there, sir. It wasn't anything spiteful.
Yeah, we think it's not in accord with the principles on which we should be operating. And I'm going to see if Bill or Ashley want to add anything to this part of the agenda. Bill, you're muted. Bill, you're muted. You're still muted. It's up in the right-hand corner, the symbol for the microphone. There you go.
Hello.
There you are.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I hit that, but I must have missed it.
Well, that's okay. That's okay.
A couple of introductory comments. First of all, Ed, if I may call you Ed, it's Bill Banta. I'm Bill. Very informal, I hope. I hope you understand, number one, that we understand that you were only on this job for 2 months, and it must have been extremely challenging to come in there and face what you had to face. So we get that, and we tried to express that in our report, but I wanted to repeat it. This may be way outside what we're supposed to do, but under the heading of trying to be helpful, my job and our job will be finished at the end of this meeting. If you want to get together next week or the following week to talk to me about any views I have, listen to whatever you want to say, to try to make your job easier and your department, your office more effective this year, I'd be glad to talk to you. Be happy to buy you a drink, or buy you lunch, whatever that might be.
As would I.
We would sincerely appreciate any insight. We're just trying to make it better.
Just call me or let me know. I guess Harry too, and I bet Ashley, although she's working, unlike Harry and Bill here. My second comment has to do with our chairman. I'll tell you, Harry has done a fabulous job for 3 years. I only hope future chairpersons will take a good look and maybe check with me on what it takes to really perform this job extremely well and effectively. He was all over us, whether we wanted to set up meetings and calls or not. We were persuaded, if not coerced, into doing so. So, Harry, thank you for all your good work.
Thank you for your comments. I appreciate it.
Finally, I think it needs to be said, I'm thinking some people might be on there recorded. I hope that other people in the city pay attention to this, because our committee represents the city of New Orleans, the citizens of New Orleans. And we citizens should be very pleased that several years ago, the mayor and the city council established the Orleans Inspector General Office and began devoting significant portions of their annual budget to the OIG. This shows that different concerns that citizens have had about possible corruption and inefficiencies within the city government, all those concerns were heard, and our leaders in the city took action and did something about it. Therefore, with the fact that we've got an Inspector General's office with a significant staff working in very nice offices at the Federal Reserve Building, equipped with a budget in 2020 of almost $4 million, there's a high expectation that the OIG will work hard, produce multiple reports, root out any kind of departments or employees of the city where there happens to be possible corruption or inefficiencies, and act, if nothing else, as a deterrent to anybody in the city who's even thinking about it in the future, because they know there's a strong, aggressive OIG. So the questions that we faced, and I think all of our citizens should ask themselves, in 2020, did the OIG satisfy or meet the expectations that we had? And stated differently, did we get our money's worth? So that's what we would go back to every once in a while as we worked on our report and continued our deliberations. Thank you, Harry.
Thanks, Bill. Ashley, do you want to make any comments now?
No, I'll just wait until I do my overview of the report.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think why don't we go ahead and do that now then? You okay with doing it now?
Yep, I'm ready.
Great.
So for everyone on the call who I haven't met yet, Ed, I'm Ashley Barrier, the third member of the Quality Assurance Review Committee. And part of this public meeting is for us to present our written report. So that's what I'm about to do. But I did want to start out, and this is kind of noted, the outset of our report is that in writing this report, we were mindful of the fact that the OIG's office had kind of a tumultuous year with facing COVID and obviously underwent an unanticipated transition. So we were mindful of that when we wrote our report and noted our concerns and recommendations. And I think, again, we can't overemphasize just how that we sincerely hope you'll take our concerns and recommendations, and in the coming year, we'll see some improvement on the areas we've already noted in terms of mainly, frankly, more output, more work output. I think I can speak for both my colleagues, Harry and Bill, that in the past 2 years, when we presented these concerns, they've just been met with defenses and not with action. And it seems, Ed, based on kind of your reception thus far, that that's not the case, that you recognize that productivity is a huge concern for the office. So that's encouraging to me personally. And I hope you act on it in the coming year.
Yeah, I mean, you know, not to interrupt you, but we take everything that you and the board is saying seriously and agree. I mean, I've been banging the productivity drum ever since I got here. And of course, the previous IG didn't necessarily agree with me. And so it's really hard to, when your boss doesn't agree with you, but I've said since day one, we need to produce more, we need to produce more. And just so, and I just want to make it clear that we're off to a great start. I don't know if the board has seen, but we coordinated our resources with the Department of Justice and the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office, and we arrested the chief mechanical engineer for accepting more than $100,000 in bribes in association with using his public office for personal gain. So we're on it.
I did not see that.
I hadn't either, so I appreciate you.
That is huge. I mean, it made huge headlines. And we're going to do more of that stuff. But keep in mind, when I got here, that agency wouldn't even work with us. And now they are, and look at what we accomplished just in a couple of months into this year. So we hear you, but we also want to stress that I'm 52% down in staff. I am trying vigorously to hire personnel, and we will get there. It's just, it's going to take some time to get that personnel back. I mean, we're 50% down.
Sure. Okay, so I'm going to go through now our report. As you saw, kind of the first section of our report was just going through, as we've done in prior years, an overview of the ordinance and explaining that the OIG's annual report is something that shall include all information on all matters undertaken, costs incurred, costs recovered, matters concluded, and any results. The ordinance also calls for the third-party advisory committee, that is us, to undertake an annual quality assurance review of the OIG. And per that ordinance, we review completed reports of audits, inspections, and performance reviews. As I mentioned before, we then present this review at the public meeting, which is this, and we are required under the ordinance to provide the written report to the OIG at least 15 calendar days before the public meeting, which we did. Our report next went through and summarized the OIG's annual report. And we then kind of turned to our comments and questions, which I will summarize now. First, we discussed the traffic safety report and noted that it was included in both in this annual report for 2020, as well as in 2019, which we found problematic, the repeated inclusion, that is.
Actually, let me say, just if I think if Bill or I have a comment, additional comment, we would raise our hand or somehow interrupt so you can say that. And if I could on that report, I found that there ought to be a better way when you have done a report. I mean, I disagreed with the traffic report being put in last year. It should have been in the year before, and that's when it was completed. But I think that the supposition on my part, no fact behind it, wanted to get some savings in, and so somehow thought that it was legitimate to put a January 20th report in. But then, if you're going to mention it again in some way, it ought to say that this has been reported on and the savings included in a prior year or something.
Yes, sir. That's absolutely correct. In the future, and when we did the recommendations, or we can do it now, but that's one of the things that we realized that in the next report we'll mention that we had already completed this report, but this is a follow-up to it. And just so you know, we did not include those cost savings in that year, sir.
I saw that. Thank you.
We didn't count it twice.
So next, we noted that the OIG did release a report of investigation on the Property Management Department, or P&D's, excessive overtime in May of 2020, but failed to include any discussion of that report in the annual report. And we actually thought it was a pretty well done report and should have been included in the OIG's annual body of work. And I think, Mr. Michel, based on your email response from this afternoon, that was just an oversight, and that going forward, you'll be sure to include all completed work. We thought the report on the Sewage and Water Board's dispute resolution process was well done, especially given kind of the challenges the OIG faced based on the Sewage and Water Board scant records. And then finally, the OIG completed 2 audits on the Audubon Commission and Institute. In terms of comments, we noted that the fund's audits focus on outdated data, and that the data was from 2012 to 2014. We questioned how useful the data was and whether it would have been helpful to obtain or collect updated data for this report that was published in 2020. We also weren't sure if the findings regarding the human resource matters were fair and appropriate, since there didn't seem to be any consideration of the length of service or past prior accomplishments of the personnel when assessing them. We then, in our report, moved to our overall comments, some of which Harry already touched on. We noticed, again, our serious concerns with the OIG's productivity, and that it only produced 5 reports in the year 2020, one of which, the traffic report, had been counted in the 2019 annual report. We noted that the OIG identified over $3.5 million in savings, but failed to identify the source of these cost savings. And I think, Mr. Michel, again, in your written response, you did provide a breakdown of those cost savings, which we appreciate, because again, we think for transparency, since cost savings is something that's required by the ordinance, it should be broken out as to where the alleged cost savings come from. We stated that we believe the OIG should better explain how it accomplished its stated mission to promote efficiency and detect fraud, waste, and abuse. And then finally, as Bill touched on, we noted that the OIG has a set allocated budget of a percentage of the city's budget to give it, and that's to give it independence. So it's not dependent on city council or the mayor for its budget. So the OIG had for the year 2020 an allocated budget of over $3.9 million and spent approximately $2.88 million with, and I'll quote here, $1,115,471 remaining. We first have serious concerns about the money spent, since the OIG only produced 4 reports in 2020 and spent $2.88 million, but also the fact that the OIG failed to use a substantial amount of its allocated budget, when I think all of us can probably agree the city of New Orleans has a lot of targets that could be investigated for abuse and inefficiency. Next, we then provided our recommendations. As if we've mentioned a number of times, we'd like to see more productivity in the year 2021. For future reports, we asked that the OIG should disclose the source of costs recovered, since again, the ordinance calls for costs recovered. We asked, and I think this has been covered, so actually I'll skip it. We asked that the OIG provides an explanation as to why it again included the traffic report for a second year, but failed to include the excessive overtime report. We noted that it would be helpful for the OIG to include a high-level breakdown of its budget so that the citizens of New Orleans could see how the OIG spends its allocated budget. And then finally, we said that it would be helpful for future reports for the OIG to include costs recovered and costs incurred in a single spot so that people can easily kind of assess the money spent and money recovered by the OIG. And that then took us, that was the end of our report. And again, I just want to reiterate, I think we recognize that the OIG underwent a transition this year. The work product the OIG did produce, though limited, was good, we thought, and tackled important issues for the city. We just sincerely hope that in the coming year, the volume of this work product expands significantly. And it sounds like you're the same mindset, and hopefully we'll be on the road to accomplish that.
Yes, I am. We have done a campaign. I've already hired an office manager, which was critical. And while I understand that you know the board thinks that the productivity should be more, and I believe so too. But I see it from somewhat of a different angle. I was actually amazed that we were able to get those reports out, given the complete chaos that we had in the office. And there are just some things I'm just not going to get into in a public fashion. But
understood.
In my 35 years of working in law enforcement, including the Department of Justice as well as the New Orleans Police Department, serving in roles as the Presidential Daily Briefer, the Joint Terrorism Task Force Commander, and the Unit Chief of the Foreign Terrorist Tracking Task Force, I can tell you by far, this was one of the most challenging assignments I have ever had. And we are overcoming them. But I just please ask that you don't dismiss the chaos that was inherent in this office. We are changing and we are moving forward. The fires have been put out and we are moving forward to be a productive part of the city where we add value. With regard to some of the comments that you made, I'm just going to touch briefly on a couple, and I'll go straight into the recommendations of. And here's a spoiler alert, which we agree with almost all of them except just one. When you had mentioned about the Audubon Commission reports, you have suggested that maybe there was some outdated data from 2012 to 2014. Well, while the data was from 2012 to 2014, we inquired of the Institute and obtained additional audit in evidence to determine if the Institute and Commission had resolved the findings in the first place, and we determined that they had not. You know, it should be noted that the 3 audits at the Audubon Commission and Institute as well, we identified more than $3.4 million in question cost. And if you divide that by the total output of what we had about a 20% return on our money, but I'll get more into detail on that later. This report also, I mean, it was somewhat dated, but it's the people in the office did the report, and the report was prepared well. It's not their fault that it sat on the desk of the Inspector General for so long. It's just, that's not their fault.
May I ask a question, Ed?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Along those lines, following up what Ashley said, we have, I saw where you, in your, what you just sent us, it's several, $1.9 million or something of, $1.7 million of Audubon payroll audit, Audubon use of funds audit, but isn't, one of the concerns we have isn't, besides the data being, I would say that it would have been good to amplify and explain the question that Ashley just asked you in your report, because anyone that's paying attention to the report would wonder why you based a 2020 report on data from 2011 or 12 and so on. But isn't a large measure or a large proportion of the monies that you all are saying, and you do say potential savings, isn't that dependent upon an Attorney General's decision on whether or not Audubon Institute is a public institution or a private one?
Well, sir, whether it's public or private, it's still the processes that we identified are indicative with not best practices for spending money. For instance, hiring and spending several hundreds of thousands of dollars with no written documentation on how those funds are going to be proceeded and the services for, that's just not very good business practice.
I agree, but one could argue that when you hire an attorney like Ms. Barrier or Mr. Banter, you don't do it strictly on price.
Well, yes, sir. But when we hire an attorney, I mean, there's a method, there's a contract per hour. And I mean, there was just no written documentation as to how those services were going to be procured and or spent and detailed. So that's, I mean, I totally think that's, when you spend a couple of $100,000, you should have something in front of you. I think we can all agree on that, sir. And with regard to the report itself, it sat for a while. There was no attorney here to do the legal review, and the Inspector General was unavailable to review it. So,
gotcha. Okay, sorry for the interruption.
I'd love to take you up on that cup of coffee someday, because
sure,
we really should. Yes, sir. So, and then with regards to the cost savings, I agree, and Larry is on the phone and he can attest. When we were looking at it, I said, I really like that report in 2016. It differentiates in one particular. It's almost like you were in my mind. I was like, I like this, and then but due to the time restraints that we had and the moving parts with Mr. Harper's departure, we were kind of just trying to keep our heads above water. So, but and again, when we get to the recommendation section, I agree that we need to have a better graphic in one place to ensure what the true value of the OIG office is. Completely agree with you there. And with that all being said, would it be okay to go straight to the recommendation, sir?
Sure. However you want to present it, Bill and Ashley, you fine with you all?
Yeah, fine by me.
Okay, yes. Yeah, sounds good. So I'll go straight into the recommendations, if I may. So for number one, the QRC wrote, for the year 2021, we would like to see more productivity from the OIG and a diversity in investigated targets. There are other organizations that warrant investigation besides the Audubon Institute and the Sewage and Water Board. So I completely agree with this, but keep in mind that the staffing levels are down, like I've already said, by 50%, and we have so few resources. We have to make sure that we utilize the very precious few resources we have in the most appropriate manner. The Sewage and Water Board has about 3.4 billion in assets and about 266 million in revenues, which accounts for about 41% of the city's total assets. So I think at some point in time, we're always going to have some communications with them because their work is critical to the city. You really can't put a price on potable water. And so I think we're going to be there, but I completely agree. As we get more personnel, I have a whole list of topics that I want to get into. So I agree with you there. Number two, in future reports, the OIG should disclose the cost, the source of cost recovered, and include a breakdown. I absolutely agree with you there. I think we're going to go back to the similar graphic of 2016 where it's all in one place, and we're going to actually add a category or two where we do save money, and there's other methods that aren't included with just the cost savings. The board had asked for a reporting of the 3.5 million in question cost, and so I wrote that in number two. About 1.6 million was with the payroll. About 995,000 was with the use of funds. Another 790,000 with the property management reduction in overtime costs, which we're very proud of that report. I'm glad you guys like that report, and I want to do more of that. The overtime records, I mean, if we just save them that portion, think what we can do for the entire city. The least amount, which for this year, for last year, but I'm looking forward to it for next year. There's 48,000 in assessors reassessments for property taxes. And I don't know if you guys had a chance to read that one for this year, but we found several dead homeowners who were receiving the homestead exemption, which, you know, it's not fair to the people who actually are paying taxes. And so they went in and reassessed those. So I'm looking forward to many returns on that investigation for next year. On number three, we asked that the OIG provide an explanation why they included the traffic safety program in the annual report without an acknowledgement that it had already produced a report. And, you know, we were still working on that. We received an enormous amount of media attention and calls from citizens to help them get their money back. The city had improperly wrote and issued tickets totaling more than $730,000. And that was a significant amount of money to the citizens in New Orleans. And we were able to produce that report and encourage the city to get the money back. And we had some follow-up about ensuring that that doesn't happen again. So, sir, we kind of had to, if we do a report, that doesn't mean we don't have the ability, or we shouldn't have the ability to go back and follow up to make sure that they're not doing that again. Because that $730,000 that the city took from those citizens was a significant impact given the, you know, the average income that the citizens in New Orleans makes. Number four, we would be useful for the OIG to include in a high-level breakdown of the budget and how it was allocated. We agree. And since I assumed command of the office, we have initiated monthly budget reportings. And I think Dr. Cowan can attest to this, where we are closely monitoring our budget and we report the budget balance each month. When I got here, there was no budget, there was no balance. We didn't know how much money we spent. We didn't know how much money we had. It drove me crazy. And I just thought it was not a very proper way to run an office. We have changed that, and we agree with you 100%. And that's what we're doing. And we have started to do that already. Since the ordinance, I'm on to number five. Since the ordinance requires the identity to cost recovered and cost incurred, we suggest, the QARAC suggests that the OIG include that information in one spot. Absolutely agree. I think it's something that we have to do to ensure the value that we have is properly reported. The men and women here are doing an amazing job, and we will place that in one easy to read format for next year. And I hope the board recognized that the report last year was word-based, whereas this one was actually graphic-based somewhat. So we are trying to actually do just that, sir. And again, I'll close with, you know, we have significant challenges. We are taking significant steps, and I promise you that we are doing everything we can to not only hold ourselves accountable to a higher standard, but we want to be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. And we will continue to grow with the board's support.
We're losing you a little bit, Ed.
Oh, I'm sorry. Rest assured that we understand and appreciate the observations, and we know that the board's time has been taken away from your professional objectives as well as your families, and we sincerely appreciate that time. And we are rebuilding, and we will, we're off to a great start. And I think as if civil service lets me hire the personnel that I want to hire, and I can meet that hurdle, we will start to rebuild, and we will grow, and we will create more efficiencies and effectiveness, and you will see a transformation. And I appreciate your time.
Did you, well, first of all, I guess, do any of us have questions about this part of Mr. Michel's report or Ed's? And the second thing is, do you want to go over your response to us, or you feel you already have, basically?
No, sir, I think we're good. Okay.
Ashley or Bill or Mike, any comments or questions?
This is Bill. I'll just say, remembering the end of the last 2 years meetings like this, I left very discouraged about the future of the OIG effectively performing its duties required by the ordinance. This year, listening to you, Ed, I am very encouraged. I know you still have a lot of hard work ahead of you, but your attitude, your good start in 2021 here, getting through the problems, at least some of the problems and the chaos, as you mentioned, you were so far terrific. We wish you well, and we appreciate the fact that you seem to have taken our comments fairly and in the most positive manner that anybody could. So thank you for that, and good luck.
Thank you, sir.
Ashley, any?
I have nothing to add at this time.
Yeah, and I agree 100% with Bill, and I hope you'll take to heart and understand our strong feeling about collaboration and any seeming requirement that we do our report in an investigative manner like you all are required to do by the ordinance. We are not. I didn't know whether you wanted Larry to say anything. We'd always be glad to hear from him. If Larry, did you have? You're muted. You're muted, Larry.
Or he's just mute.
You're muted.
Okay, am I okay?
There you are.
Yeah.
There
okay.
you are.
Good afternoon. No, I don't have anything to add. Ed pretty much covered it all. So
great. Well, Mike, do you have any comments or?
Yeah, yes, if I could, please. Thank you.
Sure.
So first of all, I want to thank the three of you very much for the work that you've done over these 3 years. It's been very important. And I'm thinking particularly of the fact that there was a critical moment during the Harper regime when he and the office was really called out in a pretty, not a disrespectful way, but in a pretty clear way about lack of productivity. And of course, it was your group that did that. And, you know, there were a whole lot of events, as you could imagine, that sort of whirled around together in this whole situation that we went through with him. But that was a moment where we got to push in the right direction. And I hope that you won't underestimate that, because I certainly don't. I certainly don't underestimate it. It seems clear to me that we have to be clearer than we are right now, that is the ordinance, I suppose, about something like standards and methods for these groups. Yours and the police one, there may be a lot of overlap there, there may not, I don't know. But I think the ordinance sort of threw you in the water and left you to figure it out. And one of the things that I would ask is, I'm gonna ask the vice chair of the board, that's Professor Calderon from Tulane, to work on standardizing the job descriptions for these quality assurance bodies. And if you have thoughts or suggestions on that, I would be grateful if, kind of as a last act, so to speak, if you would be sure that I get those. That would be valuable for us, very much so. Those are my comments, Harry.
Great. Dane, we don't have anybody else from the public on, do we?
Nope, this is it.
Did you want to say anything, Dane? We should thank Dane too, who has helped call us along on how we do this and get it going, and we appreciate your rapid response to us, our committee, and many thanks.
Glad to help.
All right.
Harry,
well,
I'm sorry, Harry. I'm sorry,
sure.
Harry. Pardon me. Let me add one other thing, if you don't mind, and I'm really following up, seconding the comment that Bill Banta made last. After the sort of meltdown that we had at the end of the Quatrevo tenure as IG, obviously we brought Mr. Harper on board thinking that he was going to help right the ship. In fact, the ship damn near sunk from my point of view. And Ed's not exaggerating at all when he talks about inheriting chaos here. And the last two board members, our last two board members are board meetings are the best ones that we've had in years, going all the way back to the good days of the Quatrevo term. And so Bill, I just want to say that I share your encouragement about where this is going now. And I think we're all going to be feeling very good going forward about the fact that we were able to turn this thing around, because the office, in my opinion, really was in jeopardy. It was in jeopardy of disgrace, public disgrace, really. So thank you again.
Well, part of the thanks for the turnaround goes to you too, Mike, and the job your group, ERB, has been doing.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate that.
Well, I think if there's no more questions or comments or criticisms or whatever, then hearing none, I think we should adjourn the meeting and look forward to a much improved and greater productivity, of which I share the optimism that Bill and Ashley do. And good luck to you. And if we can help, let us know.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Meeting's adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, Ashley, for your time.
Amen.